Oh,
Okay, so it's 6 p.m. on the 2nd of July of the year of 2024. This will commence the Buckley City Council regular study session. With that, the first item is something that we need to take very seriously. So this is police department staff, and we have Chief Alfano here.
Okay, hey, thanks for getting me on.
Oh,
Like that.
like that.
Thank you for short notice to get me on the agenda here. I know that public finance or admin public finance committee was probably a month and a half or 2 months ago, maybe the last one, where I had brought up staffing and succession planning with that caveat. We're still running into the same type of things. So back then we had an officer, we've had 2 officers leave since then. So currently we've hired one, and we are in the process of trying to replace Eric Huntley, who just left in June. But we could be in dire straits with succession planning. And the only reason why I say that is because we now have 3 officers that are eligible to retire. 2 more, including myself, in the next year will be eligible to retire. So that's 5 of 11 bodies, plus the bodies that are left. So there's potential for 8 officers out of 11 to potentially be turnover in this department. And I am worried that we run into a situation like the city of Orting's in, where they got behind the 8 ball, and it has taken them they've been down to 5 bodies, and they're budgeted for 13 positions. And they're down to 5, 6. They're finally getting back to staffing, but it's taken a couple of years to do so. And so my concern is that the officers that are left here are going to be ran ragged, because they're currently working. Right now, they're working by themselves the majority of the time. Like we have an officer out, for instance, tonight we have an officer out on sick leave. So we have 2 officers that have worked back-to-back 12-hour shifts, Monday night and Tuesday night. We've got 2 cops working day shift, night shift, and that's how we've had to do it, because we've had 1 officer being down the bodies, plus training bodies and everything else. So that's a long way of getting at. Courtney and I have been talking, and we have been trying to brainstorm ideas on how to get in front of this, so that we don't too get behind the 8 ball like Orting did. And there are a few ideas that we've had, and that I wanted to approach the council with, and really, one of the things that I'd like to do is, because we do not have luxury anymore of reserve staffing. So back in the day, we used to have reserve officers. So if an officer left, we call it like the bullpen. We'd go hire right off our reserve pool. Well, reserve pools have went away as the state mandated, because remember, reserves are volunteers. As the state mandated all the mandatory training, reserves just couldn't keep up. And so it's not the industry standard to have reserves. Well, that really hurt departments like ours that utilized reserves, because reserves, we'd automatically have someone who we've trained, taught them, introduced them to law enforcement the Buckley way. And so it was much easier for them to get hired, get into the police academy, and then subsequently, or later on, become a Buckley officer full-time. We don't have that luxury anymore. Reserve programs, reserve academies are just gone. And so it really hurt departments like ours, because we have to go the entry level route. So we have to recruit just like everybody else is recruiting. And of course, when we recruit, we're recruiting with lesser, they're recruiting people for money, everything else they can do to get these. So we have to go in, and we're finding good officers, but they are essentially unavailable to us, because we're having to train them for up to a year before they're a viable police officer for the city of Buckley, because you're talking 5 to 6 month police academy. then you got 14 weeks of FTO training. And so they're really taking a long time. It takes us a long time to get that. So what I would like to do is advance these anticipated, like, for instance, the retirement. We're going to have one officer scheduled to retire next year. That's going to happen. So what I'd like to do is advance the hiring process, bring on a 12th body, not permanently, but so we can get him in the police academy, get him trained in 24 here. So when that officer retires in the early 25, boom, we have him ready to go. We can get him, we could hopefully have him through FDO and training. My budget in our 109 fund will allow me to take that cost, pay that 12th officer temporarily. And so, and then when obviously the retirement of the 11th officer, boom, then that 12th officer becomes the 11th officer. We're not talking a permanent 12th officer, although believe me, if we could figure it out, I'd love more bodies. But I know realistically the city has challenges, and budgeting wise that we can function at 11 officers fairly well. However, it would behoove us or help us out to be able to advance that by a few months. And I think I can absorb that, and that's one option. The other option is to try to what Corey does, try to retain the officers that are leaving, not retiring, but leaving. How do we retain them? And that can be a number of things, but maybe we go the route of a retention bonus. And we offer that to everybody that's still with the department. We kind of just played with numbers and stuff like that, and what would be a reasonable thing. And we came up with a pretty good number that I feel like we could do for the 8 officers that are still here. And that's around $2,500, the $2,500 bonus for being loyal to this department. And being loyal to Buckley and wanting to serve here. That goes a long way in those officers that are here, in let them know that they're wanted and they're appreciated for the 12-hour shifts they're pulling day in and day out. Besides, they're obviously they get overtime for that too, but it would really be helpful to do something like that. My budget can also, we can absorb that too. That's not a substantial number. You're looking at $20,000. So those are kind of the retention things I'm trying to get at and stay ahead. And if we can always stay ahead, then we're never going to be able to, or we're never going to be in a situation like the city of Orion where you are just scrambling to get coverage. For me, I came here with the intention of making it better than when I left it, right? And so it kept me up at night scrambling. How if I was to go in the next 3 to 5 years, how am I going to make it better if I can't get cops to stay here and be productive and want to be here? And so it's something that would help out greatly if we can do a few of those things. So that's pretty much all I have. I just wanted to kind of put it out to everybody.
So I'll start quickly here. We must have all been on the same wavelength this last weekend since the agenda came out. We kind of digested it, and I'm kind of thinking, and I have a background that informs me well. So I was thinking about the same things. I know that we have people that are eligible, by the state standards to retire coming up. And I'm thinking about this bonus thing. We know what the game's been played since the defund the police, right? And all of that and all of this brand that is now out there, it's out there everywhere. We've had officers leave to go for the cash. And one thing that I know that the last thing anybody who's been on the job and has been loyal and has stuck through things wants to hear is, I know we need to hire new cops and give them a hiring bonus, but what about me? First and foremost, I am for a retention bonus. And I don't know how that's negotiated or whatnot. We have the increments of years of service, right? I don't know, I have not seen that, well, I haven't seen in a while, the text of the collective bargaining agreement, but they have longevity in there, and so that could be structured easily. Maybe that would let us keep a couple for maybe a year or two more. Then we can think about hiring bonuses. But you would know better about the pool of entry level versus, the laterals you're trying to get. That's would be secondary. You answered my next point, the reserve program. I thought, could we resurrect that? What I heard you say is that and since I've been gone, they have changed a lot in Olympia. So basically reserve programs don't meet the standard.
No, and they don't. And we just actually brought on a reserve. Corey Tennell is a reserve officer that he lateraled from. He was a reserve officer with the city of Algona. He has no intent. He wants to volunteer. He lives in Buckley community. He's been a reserve for 6 years, I believe, or maybe longer, 9 years, I think it was. But he has a really well-paying job that he can't. He's the sole winner for his family, so he wants to be a full-time police officer, but he just can't do it. So this is the next best thing. It's great we can bring him on because we still have our reserve program within our policy and procedures. And so that allows us to bring him on and train him, and he'll work, shifts with the officers trying to, work his way out. But to simply find reserves and say, hey, we want you to volunteer, and we're going to send you to 220 hours of training and for free, by the way, and you got to buy all your stuff.
Yeah.
It's just not, people are like, what? We can't
We
even
moved
get
on
cops
from that, yeah.
to go full-time.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of a weird world. And it really did, it hurt our department, it hurt small departments because we relied on reserves. I know when I left here back in 95, we had 15 reserves. I mean, and they were competing for that one position that I vacated. And so it was great. And it's just over time, the state has shifted their mandates and everything else and made it harder for agencies like ours to maintain the recruiting of reserves. So
Last thing I had, idea down here, I know about academy slots. We have where we're at geographically, it's in Normandy Park. I know they have the satellite ones, Pasco, maybe down in Clark County. I don't know. How far in advance does a city have to bid for an academy slot?
So I cannot submit a name for an academy slot until they've been hired. So that means that I have to, and that's part of this asking for this extra body for the time being, because I can get him through background, but until he has offer in hand, I cannot submit his name to the CJTC until that offer is in hand. He signed off that he is a police officer of the city of Buckley. Now they've done a good job of, they've opened satellite training to, Vancouver, East Side, up north, all over the place, which has helped Normandy Park or CJTC, the main one, get officers in there faster. There still is a waiting list. However, they know the small agencies take precedence. So as soon as you're basically going from, if it's a 6-month wait to get you in the academy, by the end of it, you're probably waiting a month as a smaller agency. The state also did a good thing, and now State Academy is free for cities. So that's a $7,000 savings to my budget for submitting these new officers. So, and we've got 3 good applicants right now that we're running through background that hopefully will be viable to send off. So as they go. So
Last thought quickly with that, I wonder if we can explore since the chief said that what Criminal Justice Training Commission says you have to have an offer in hand in order to go to the academy. If we could, along the way, in anticipation, come up with maybe an agreement between the city and the police guild to be able to hire somebody, have an offer in hand, and they could be gainfully employed by the city doing something before they go to the academy.
Yeah, and you know, I experienced that in Bonnie Lake. You know, we hired early and we couldn't get two of them into the police academy for back then it was like 3 or 4 months. And so we obviously had, it was summertime, we had the lake with the boat. So they were in polos with Bonnie Lake Police. And you know, we were having them do all kinds of stuff for the department. We could figure something like that out here as well. You know, as a temporary, there's a lot of things that you know, they can start diving into policies and procedures, you know, all the trainings, pre-training stuff that we need to get them through, qualifications, everything like that. So it can be, yeah.
I think that would be something to really look into, to stay, like you, out of your mouth, stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and we are staying, you know, it seems like for me, when all of a sudden I think it's dire, and then a little nugget happens to fall into our lap, and you know, so we, you know, with an exceptional lateral, so there's potential that we have another exceptional lateral that may come to us. So but we have to go through the interview process and do all that in background and everything else. So I wanted to get here and make sure that I was able to, you know, kind of put it all in your ears. So that way we can start thinking about that, because it's like when you get a third, you know, half of your department eligible to retire, you know, and I have talked with a couple of officers and they have told me, hey, this is my exit date. Here's my exit date. And so I know those. And so it'd be nice to be able to go, okay, with that, let's get these bodies in here and get them trained so that we're just hit the ground running with them.
Councilmember Green.
I have a couple questions here. So one, is the $2,500, is that enough to be competitive, to retain some of these folks?
A retention, you know. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I know if I got $2,500 just handed to me and said, hey, man, this is just for you being here and being loyal to us and doing a good job for us. You know, would I love to give them more? Yeah, I mean, but I gotta be fiscally responsible with my budget, and I don't, you know, with the revenue that comes into that fund, if we expend, say, $50,000, whatever, to give these officers, you know, $5,000 to $10,000 each or whatever, I don't know if that would be all that responsible on my part when I'm thinking of, because out of that same fund comes our police cars, it comes everything else, and so equipment, and there's a lot of different things that come in and out of there. So, yeah, I know if it, you know, I think we could put a caveat in there too. Hey, you know, we're giving you $2,500. If you left within 2 years, you owe that $2,500 back. It's just a thought. So something we could do there too. So unless you're retiring, obviously if you're retired, I can't keep someone from retiring, you know. So, and it might, you know, for someone to retire, like the guys that are eligible to retire, they might take that $2,500 and like, hey, thanks for the retirement gift. I'm out, you know, and that's okay, because, you know, guys that are eligible to retire aren't as productive as guys that are eager and brand new and ready to learn. So, you know, yeah.
I guess the follow-up question would be, like, in addition to kind of this retention bonus, maybe not so much for the folks who are looking to exit, but are there any opportunities like for professional development, like maybe a school or some kind of certification that if they go to some larger department, they probably in the back of the line, but we can, you know, dangle something like that, like say, hey, we'll send you to this course you wanted to go to,
And
if you stick around. Are there things like that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, simply succession planning. Detective Plaster's been in there for several years, right? We're gonna need a detective because he's going to retire in the next year and a half. He's out the door. And so we have the officers. That's the nice thing about Buckley is that the officers have been able to kind of pick their path. Hey, I'd like to be in Detective Plaster's position. So they've already been taking classes, like going to background school, doing all the stuff that they would need so they can step right into his position. And so there is that too. Sometimes they get a little impatient and I get that. And that's why a lot of departments have rotating detectives so that you always have people moving in and out, but then you don't have fluency in the investigations room. We're not so big that we have a lot of different options as far as, we don't have SROs, we don't have, but those specialty assignments that we do belong to, those officers are allowed to do that and they get paid for doing those extracurricular things like motor vehicle collisions and all that stuff too. So they are there. It's just, it's in a smaller department, it's harder to create those positions and get the movement because at the backbone of every police department is patrol, right? And patrol, after so many years can get monotonous no matter where you are. I mean, you want to move, you want to do that. Frankly, it's why I left when I did. It was because I was like, I need to do something else. And I didn't see a movement for myself way back in 2000 when I left here. So I went to a larger department so that I could get that movement. But it's a little different now in that you're lateraling, but and so I got to educate the officers. Just because you're moving doesn't mean you're going to be, moving on. You might spend the next 5 years at your new department on graveyard patrol where you wouldn't when you were here. Before you get the opportunity to get a detective, or you could be a detective in a year and a half here, when Detective Plaster goes. So those opportunities and that's it. Like for me personally, I've never been, I want every police officer they have to have their own career goals. And my job is to get them, right? No matter where that is, whether it's the city of Buckley or whether they decide to go. I've never held anybody back and say, no, don't do it. Right? I've always just educated them. Hey, I've been there. I've done it. This is what I learned from it. This is what, this is what you can expect. And so, that's my job. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments?
Well, I agree. 2,500. Maybe 5-10 years ago, that was a lot of money.
Yeah, it's not.
That's just not enough. And if we need as a city to help our police department out, like we help our fire department out,
Mhm.
I think we need to discuss that and bounce it up a bit more.
My suggestion was to match it, so they get 5 and just take it out of the reserve. I mean, at this point, what is our officers in Buckley comparative to surrounding agencies? Like, how much less do they make? Like, I don't know, like.
We were on market when we did our last contract,
Okay.
but since then Bonnie Lake just renegotiated their contract and it was a 17% increase, right? Over a
Yeah.
3-year term. And so it's continuing to fluctuate, right? Every
Right.
year, if we're not at least at CPI, if not evaluating the market. So we're expecting that we'll renegotiate next year is when we start negotiations for contracts. So our first year under the new contract will be 2026. So 2025 is predetermined. 4% increase, I believe.
Okay.
So 2026 will renegotiate or for 2026, 2027, 2028, we will see an increase during that time, again, to maintain our competitive edge in the market. One thing that Chief Alfano has mentioned in the past is the need for dual coverage for that quality of life. That'll be something else that we're going to talk about as part of the contract negotiations. SWAT is another thing that we're not able to offer that opportunity to our officers right now because of our insurance. And so we are going to be giving a tentative breakup with our current insurance authority. There is another option for insurance coverage where we would be able to join SWAT and see if they either reconsider that or if council chooses to move a different direction so that we can give that opportunity to our officers, which we can't today. So those are a couple of things that we're expecting for negotiation. So right now, or a couple of years ago, we weren't much under.
Okay.
But looking at how these contract cycles go, we've fallen a bit below again.
Well, and losing officers.
And we're losing,
It's a-
and I will say, Chief Alfano did not mention that we are expecting another possible
Yeah.
exit possibly. So with that, and we know right now, city of, is it Ording or Sumner is still offering the bonus. Bonnie Lake is no longer offering their
Yeah.
bonus
Bonnie Lake is no longer offering, but yeah, most of the other agencies are off.
for hiring.
Yeah.
So, but in those larger departments, Chief mentioned that we do have several or many different retirements in the next couple of years. So there is a bit more opportunity for advancement compared to potentially someone moving to some of these other agencies where they're going to have to spend possibly a few more years to achieve that same spot.
Correct.
So we'll do that part of the messaging, but we could really use help with incentivizing the folks that we have here to stay here and having at least one additional spot open up for this next biennium, at least to have that 12th person. So we're ready when we lose 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 officers in the
Yeah.
next biennium, because that's just the reality.
And there's a substantial savings from an officer who is 25 years and retiring versus an
Yeah.
entry-level police officer. I
Yeah.
mean, there's quite a gap in pay. So, I mean, there is a savings there too.
And right now, that criminal justice fund, account 109, is budgeted at the end of the year to have $515,000 in it. We do receive about $137,000 annually. So that revenue alone is close to supporting an officer. The department's done a great job of underspending from that account, I would say, in years where they were able to, not replacing equipments or making upgrades to equipments or doing things like we're discussing right now, so that we have the flexibility to support the department in times of need and times now. One thing that the department does a great job of is making sure that we always have the more cutting edge equipment. So
Right.
we are not falling behind in terms of salaries, wages, and what you show up in the equipment that you use every day. We try to stay competitive in that way.
No, I agree with Amanda. I think we should offer to double it at least.
So 5, what about 2,500 now and 2,500 in 48 months? Or would you rather just say 5 now, stay for?
I think we just,
Go
Or
I
five
think
now.
give
I
it
do
that.
5, but I think to your point, there should be a clause of
Yeah.
like, if you do leave.
Absolutely.
Within a
Unless-
certain, yeah.
Unless you retire,
unless
because
you
one
retire.
thing we don't want
Yeah.
is to have folks who
Yeah.
are ready to retire
Yes,
and
right.
prepared
Yeah.
to retire, stick around just because they don't want to have to
Yeah.
pay the city back.
Right.
Yeah,
I agree.
So, okay.
Question. So you said we'll be looking at an increase after this next year. So, I mean, 2 years is a long time, so you gotta stick around for 2 years for $5,000. Maybe like 1 year, and then you're gonna get an increase anyway.
Mhm.
I don't know, I think that, for me, that if I was the officer, that would be attractive to me. If it was 2 years, I mean, a lot can happen in 2 years, a lot of life can change, oh, I might have to pass on this.
They're getting a 4% increase per contract in 2025. So it'll be 2026 will be the first year of their new contract.
Okay.
And so they will receive likely more than a 4% increase if we look at past contracts.
Okay,
And what's happening again in the market.
yeah,
In 2026.
Mhm.
So that 5 would be kind of I guess, bridge the gap for 2025.
Yeah.
And
Councilmember
2024.
Song. When you spoke to the older guys or been there longer, make more money, what's wrong with being heavy-handed and carrying 3 guys that, are starting out, and then as soon as they're like all ready to go, incentivizing the old timers to retire? Like doing it in reverse?
Yeah, but that's carrying quite a bit. I mean, if we carried 13, even 14 officers until these guys retired, that would, I'd have to run the numbers and Courtney would.
It's about
probably-
$140,000 a year
For a new
per
hire,
officer.
but
Yeah.
for the new hires?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
With
because we
benefits.
assume all benefits. So that would be full family, full benefits, about 140. And it might even be slightly more than that. I'm basing that off of the firefighter
Yeah.
for 130. And I know the police is slightly higher than fire. So.
and then we have
it's
to
a significant
incorporate,
Amount per year.
not necessarily vehicles in that first year because a
Yeah.
lot of times they're not, but all other equipment, there's a substantial amount of money there. So, do.
Well, I kind of agree with, on some of the tenets that Councilmember Rossano said. I mean, we need to stay above the curveball. I mean, yes, and I fully understand equipment, salaries, benefits. Don't necessarily need a car because they could ride with somebody else. But this all should be on the table. I'm for the 5K retention bonus. I don't care how that's parsed out. That could be, the administration can parse that out, how they need to parse it out. And I think we also need to explore, not necessarily right now, it's probably not imperative like today, but a hiring bonus as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at least
And
it
then,
makes somebody look.
and then somewhere in there, here's your bonus now, and after so many years, give them another, I don't know, my friend who's a nurse has that. She got a $25,000 bonus, and then if she stays on for 2 years, she gets it again.
Oh,
And I'm just like, that's
well,
We're
great.
seeing that
I know, that's
in local
crazy, but
government. We're
Yeah.
seeing that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so hard to keep
Mhm.
people right now.
Mhm.
It's just crazy.
I just asked Sandy what the full cost is, so I'll see if I can get that.
But I
before the
think
end
like
of the
Amanda
meeting.
said too, using the reserves, I mean, we all had the discussion of that's an emergency and this is an emergency. If we start losing our safety, so.
Well, maybe I would suggest, I wouldn't like to take more than. I mean, as much as coming, I can take 20 grand out of my budget and be okay. So maybe we do half and half, half out of reserves, half out of my budget. I'm okay with either one of those, so I
So
want to be respectful of everything we got going on, so.
there seems
Mhm.
to be general consensus for a $5,000 bonus and hiring a 12th officer.
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And possibly a 13th, which we'll discuss during the biennium.
Yeah.
And again, those aren't permanent positions. They're to replace those that we anticipate losing.
Losing, yeah.
Okay.
Cause you're already gonna lose 2 people, right? You're thinking you're gonna lose one now and then someone's gonna retire next year, right? So we're already
Yeah.
down 2.
And we may
We're
be down-
currently down one right now, on this position. We could be down another one by fall. And then we could be down, and then we could be down another one by
April.
early April. That could be 3 positions right there. We're already down one, but it could be 2 more.
And then you have
And then-
3 that are eligible to retire by the end of 2026.
Yes, and one that's told me 2026 I'm going, so that'd be a 4th that's gonna
Or
go.
for sure, 2
And then-
pending.
And then two pending, and then.
Right. Today.
Well,
In your back
So
pocket.
we do have 3 entry-level candidates and we have a couple of laterals that we're actively interviewing. So we
Yeah.
have a pool to pull from
Yeah.
to fill these spots.
And let's
And we
say,
have more than that for entry level. We have 3 that are
Yeah, in background,
in background. So
Yeah.
it's already been
if we
interviewed.
wait too long to offer them
Mhm.
a position, they're gonna go someplace else.
We just encountered that.
Especially without a.
yes,
I know.
we lost one because of that, but that's the way it goes. I think the ones that we currently have are vested to Buckley. I think they're gonna be, talking with them, they like the small town, they like Buckley's feel, so I think we're gonna be good there. So we'll proceed with getting them backgrounded and ready to go. So that way, if we anticipate anticipate these movements in the department, we can just grab them, and go. So,
Yeah, because we don't want to be stuck next year at the same time, down to
Right.
3 or 4 officers. That's like
Mhm.
what we had a few years back.
Anything else on this topic? Very important. And are you sufficiently satisfied about what we want to see?
Yes, so next steps will be, we're already bringing forward mid-period adjustments, mid-annual adjustments. So we'll add this to those adjustments for the budget and for the bonuses. And then until we hire those positions, we won't need to amend the budget to move forward there, but we will extend 2 offers immediately or as soon as we're
can.
ready.
Yeah.
Yes, as soon as they've
Soon as
made
we can
it,
get 'em through
completed the
background.
process
Yeah.
and then move ahead.
Anything else? Thank you very much,
Thank
chief.
you,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much.
Looks like our next topic is the comp plan update. Always riveting.
We're gonna have time
Interesting.
tonight.
Brittany has a game for us.
So invited senior planner Chris Farnsworth is here and Director Banks. And between the 3 of us, hopefully we will be able to answer any of your questions. Our goal tonight is to get clear direction on where we want to go when it comes anything that's been discussed in the comp plan thus far is fair game to discuss. But we want to make sure that we have clearly carved out where we are going to include these more affordable housing units and what we would like commercial development to look like moving forward. So what I've included on everybody's seats is the 2015 comprehensive plan, which to the best of my knowledge has not been updated since it was adopted in 2015. So this is our comp plan future land use map as it exists today. What's on the table in front of you is the proposed revision. At first glance, you can see that there's more colors on the proposed revision. We are going to go back to our consultant and request that they consolidate this a little bit more. But in terms of what you see for commercial and residential, no significant changes from what you have in front of you. Compared to the 2015 comprehensive plan, which is what's currently in effect, what we're proposing to remove is this industrial general commercial combo zone, which is currently shown on our zoning map to allow neighborhood mixed use, which it should not. So it doesn't appear from what I've been able to find that since we updated our 2015 comprehensive plan map, we fully implemented it into our zoning code. So right now we have some inconsistencies between our comp plan map and our zoning code. So right now we allow residential development in an industrial land use type, which we probably shouldn't for our comp plan. So that's one. And then we are also proposing to continue to allow light industrial, but not carve or set aside, carve out any specific land that is dedicated only to light industrial, and instead allow light industrial to be in what will be called the central commercial flex zone, or commercial flex corridor mixed use on the future land use map, which is everything in front of you depicted in brown. So what is right here, this first overlay on the drafting pad is what is currently in process. And it's not everything that's currently in process, but it's what's currently in process that's significant multifamily, as well as kind of in this 410 corridor that we've already discussed making some substantial changes to the land use table for. Since we last spoke, one thing that I didn't realize, but Director Banks shared with me earlier today, is that we do actually already have what we had discussed potentially implementing, which is 150-foot buffer off of 410, where you're not allowed to put a variety of land uses, including storage. And so right now that buffer exists. It has, to the best of my knowledge, been enforced. It's why, for example, the storage right next to Lost Woods Brewery is kind of set behind. So the question becomes for tonight, do we want to extend that buffer? Do we want to possibly put a moratorium on storage altogether? How do we want to see the commercial land that we have available, both what's underutilized as well as what's vacant, redeveloped? And is there still a need in the city to have standalone industrial zoning? So right now where that exists is what's zoned in purple or what is designated in purple on your comp plan map. This is confusing because again, these don't really speak directly to one another. The zoning map is what we would use to regulate today. So even though it may say that we allow for residential zoning or not allow for residential zoning on our comp plan map, we do in fact allow for residential development today on our zoning map. So everything in that pink is called neighborhood mixed use. We are which is meant to be a buffer zone essentially between commercial and residential development. It does allow for standalone multifamily, and we are proposing to have that zone, the light industrial zone, and what is currently central commercial and general commercial all combined into one future land use map designation, which is called corridor mixed use. The problem with keeping it as just one is that we are still going to need, in order to meet our housing allocations, higher density zoning. And so we have attempted with this yellow sections to identify some areas where we currently allow for urban high density that we may consider up zoning in order to allow for higher density than what we do currently. So in your packet, the second page shows our housing allocations, the requirements that we have from the Department of Commerce. So our current housing supply is estimated to be 1,957 units. It's gone up a little bit. That's about where we are today. And in 2044, we have been allocated 1,260. Of that, 1,260, 220 is supposed to be permanent supportive housing. So those would be high density units, average 600 to 800 square feet. 0 to 30% non-permanent supportive housing to 50% is an additional almost 400 units combined. So to make way for the 660 units, there's a couple of ways that we could move forward. We could upzone a very small or a smaller area of land to a very high density, or we could upzone a larger amount of land to a lower density. So I tried to depict what that might look like using these little blocks.
I love this. I am living for
Okay,
this.
good. So down here, well, these are 8 acres on our little. One way that we could move forward is by just taking these 8 acres right here and zoning it 54 dwelling units per acre. And if we were to just, it's high, it's big, it's a high, so, but that's one option, right? And there we are, we've met our criteria for the Department of Commerce, we have solved the map problem. That is where that density could possibly go, and it would have a zone all of its own. And that would be the only area in the city that could be zoned to that level. I did speak with the fire chief. He prepared a memo. We cannot go above, we can go above 35 feet in height for 2 structures. There's a limitation for us to maintain our accreditation without a ladder truck, where we cannot have 5 structures over 35 feet in height. And right now we have the admin building and the building right next to the admin building. They're both school district properties that are over 35 feet. And so we could have potentially 2 additional structures that are over 35 feet. So 2 potential structures could be located here, but also when you're looking at 600 to 800 square foot units, we could achieve that zoning on that piece of property. That's one option.
Do ADUs count in this number?
ADUs, no, not really. So ADUs are factored in. It's a factor in the equation, but in terms of how we are explaining it to Commerce, it's adjacent to a single family residence. I don't believe that they would consider that to be enough when it comes to affordable housing. They're still considered single family residential units rather than multi-family residential units that are more affordable. So even realistically, if we were to allow, well, we do allow ADUs. We allow up to 4 units now under the revised House bill, up to 4 units on every parcel that's single family residential. Those are still above permanent supportive housing levels or under 50% AMI.
No.
What they would rent for or sell for.
So it don't.
So they
But you can
they
still-
count towards.
So we'll still have that, potential, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
Almost any lot in Buckley can have an ADU, can it?
Yes, but I think that those would fit more in the 50 to 80 to 80% AMI category versus the under 50% AMI category.
Okay.
So they're part of the equation. 1260, about half of our units that were allotted are to be over 50% and half are to be under. This is a math problem for our comprehensive plan. What the market actually brings in and what permit applications we receive and what development projects we see come forward is beyond our control.
Mhm.
What we are tasked with is just saying, yes, these units can be here and this is where they can go. So if we wanted to look at the math problem differently, this piece of paper I just handed out shows that if we had 25 dwelling units per acre, we would need 32 acres of vacant land. So now we need 4 of these. We need to find spots for 4 of these squares to go. Or 16 acres. So we can spend some time looking And that would be the other extreme. I think when you get below that 25 or above that, yes, below 25 dwelling units per acre in terms of density, you're losing that affordability factor. So 25 is kind of our minimum that we would be looking for in order to be able to meet this requirement for under 50% AMI.
I got a quick question to lay the groundwork for all of us. This is the comp plan. And because of the edict of the state of Washington, we are told as a municipality to have room and designate for affordable housing.
Yes.
We don't have to build it. It just has to be zoned that way and then somebody can come in.
Yep.
And so the government, the nanny state of Washington has decided that the lesser amount of units per acre may not be affordable housing. So they decide what affordable housing is, even though they're not building it and not setting the market rate. Because I'm not aware that by us having to comply with the comp plan, say this is where this can go, that I lost my train of thought like Joe Biden. So I'll just leave it at that. I just want to make sure I'm understanding what we
Yes.
have to do as a city. Councilmember Green.
So if we went with this, what was it? 8
8 acres.
acres.
Yep.
That would be zoned that way. That means that like unless somebody comes in and puts 1 billion dwelling units per acre there, it just kind of, that plot just sits there? Is that how that would work?
No, we
Could be
would,
something else?
we wouldn't recommend a minimum zoning or a minimum density. It would be standalone multifamily would be allowed there
Okay.
up to 54 dwelling units per acre.
Up to-
And we could still enforce our building height of 35 feet, or we could say you could include up to 2 structures that are over 35 feet. And they would have to continue to apply provide for parking. They would have to continue to provide for any of their access. We assume that on any given parcel with environmental constraints, setbacks, the lot coverage of the building itself is no more than 50%. So of the 8 acres, about 4 acres would be buildings. And the other 4 acres would be open space, landscaping, your drive aisles, your parking. Roughly. There's certainly cases where you've seen buildings take up more space than that, but we have very limited access to transit. I don't see that we're going to reduce our parking significantly. This would be a park island. We would still require some open space, right, for that type of a community. So I think 50% is a fair metric or a fair assumption.
So if we went that route
Mhm.
and developer came in and said, we don't want to do something with that much density, we're gonna do something much less. And then that plot of land is gone, we've still have done our part
Mhm.
to meet the state and the nanny state's objection for us.
Yes, that's correct, but I wouldn't assume that that was what would happen.
Okay,
We
Okay.
have received a pre-application for this parcel with some interest in developing standalone multifamily. Currently, we require it to be mixed use. We have not defined mixed use in our code, but we will. Most cities that have a mixed use criteria, it means that the ground level or some portion of the development, a certain percentage of it has to go towards commercial. And right now, with the way that our code is written and this frontage zone that we have, the first 150 feet would have to be commercial. It couldn't be residential. And so that would be another option. However, this property has a lot of environmental constraints. It is completely covered. It's right next to the fire station off of 165. So when you're first coming into town, it's completely wooded and wet. Yes, so
Yep.
it would be very difficult to redevelop it for multifamily alone. I think it is more feasible that it's a mixed use. And if a developer wanted to come in and tackle that property, I think it would be a shame to see it all go to multifamily when it is in a prime location. It's just very wet and wooded.
Yeah.
But that would be another one that we've already received a pre-app, and I would not be surprised if you hear from the applicants at a council meeting in the future with interest in redeveloping that property as well.
Just before we get too far down the road, what is the penalty for not complying with the Department of Commerce's edict
We would not get our comprehensive plan certified and we would not be eligible for state funding
for Highway 410? et
for
cetera?
transportation. So right now, like our transportation, and well, this is a terrible example because the Main Street project was so popular, but that would be one example. That would be one example of a grant that we would not be eligible for. Complete Streets would be another example. 410 would be another example. So anything that we are looking to the state for, I don't know if they connect it to RCO funding, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did also. So it's kind of, you have to do this in order to receive grant funding.
But yeah, I just want to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page as.
Otherwise, we have to do it if we get our hands slapped or go stand in the closet.
Yeah, we don't even get our hands slapped. They just won't,
Yeah,
they won't
yeah,
fund us
yeah.
for 410 or whatever. Buckley has grown to the point where we're forced to grow more, even though Pierce County doesn't follow these rules. State of Washington doesn't follow these rules, nor should we follow these rules, but we can put placeholders in there, and the problem is, exactly to your point, Brandon, is we put that in there, the market will drive it. They're probably
Yeah.
not gonna go, oh, we'll cut it in half from 54 to 26 or
The
whatever.
minute we put it in there, I think it's getting sewed up and
Oh, yeah.
54 units per thing. Oh, I said the minute we put it in there, it's gonna get sewed up in 54 units.
Councilmember Burgess.
So if we do this little 8 acre thing and we have high density right there. And then someone comes in and they purchase it and they don't have as high a density. Then do we have to go back to the comp plan and change it to get another area with that high of density?
Not before we are required to recertify in another 10-year period. So in 10 years or 8 years, when we start this process again, we will
would
have to do it
that?
again. Yeah, we'll have to do it likely
Mhm.
unless the track that Commerce is taking completely changes. We have been assigned this affordability housing target, and until we meet our quota, we will continue to have to try every time that we do our comp plan to find the spot that they can go.
No.
So there's underutilized land and there's vacant land. We have a lot of vacant land compared to other cities in Pierce County where these units could potentially go. So our consultants are recommending that we look at vacant land for extremely affordable housing. So anything under 30% AMI, and then that 30 to 50% AMI, we could be looking at underutilized land, which, for example, could include tired apartment complexes that currently exist, a scaffolding yard where that could potentially be reused as something else. So anything that's already developed, but maybe isn't living up to its full potential. So we're looking for some land right now that is completely vacant, that will be zoned higher. And then some land that is vacant or not vacant that maybe isn't quite as high of zoning, or we could choose a lower amount of zoning across the board, let's say 30, 40 dwelling units per acre, and just have more land set aside for that. Yeah.
Do we know how many acres the Illumina is roughly? That would be just to your,
Let's just get
Square.
a square for it.
to your point, if we upzoned Illumina, the block that Illumina sits on, that would drive the value up and they may be inclined to sell to somebody who to develop it. And there we kill two
Yeah,
birds
that
with
can
one
be
stone.
worse.
Solve this
Or so.
commerce issue and
So it'd be, zoning would be changed for the future, not for them, but they would recognize that the value's there. and they
Someone
would
else
pop
would-
smoke.
yeah. Yep, exactly. And so we get the Department of Commerce issue kind of, we get that placeholder in there and we could eliminate that storage facility, which I think a lot of people would like to see. So.
It would become a non-conforming use, so we couldn't force that they move,
Yeah,
but we
no.
could say that they can't expand.
Yeah.
Yeah, illegal non-conforming use, so they can stay for as long as they want. But they couldn't expand, and if for some reason the use was to be terminated for an extended period, we could say they could replace it.
So what are the other options besides that? Like, what, because you have more.
Yep.
specifics.
Yeah, so in terms of vacant land, there's not a whole heck of a lot along 410. This is the currently vacant. It is the future for Robertson Landing. These 3 parcels are Peachtree, but there's nothing that would prevent us, though we do have a pending project here, from also upzoning that, even though we already have a development in process. Again, we're not looking for, we're not enforcing any type of minimum zoning. So whatever's already in play could continue to move forward.
That sounds like a
So those would be two options. This property that we already have that is urban high density, I believe, could be upzoned to allow for that again in the future. These are the apartments that are currently on River.
Oh.
And it
Yeah,
could be the
and this
same
yellow.
for the Eagles Hall.
Yeah.
That's not being utilized very well.
Mhm.
They could say, oh, we're gonna buy this piece over here
Mm.
and sell this for triple, or whatever that looks like. There's a million options out there.
I would say that anything immediately fronting 410 would be very quick to have a developer have interest in. If we were to allow standalone multifamily, I don't think that that's probably going to ever be the best use of that land. And so we would likely want it to be off of 112th or somewhere within our existing residential zoning, which is depicted on this map in green as I think that ULD stands for urban land designation. So with that, we could potentially open up a lot more land if we were to look at just placing it somewhere in the middle of our neighborhoods. And I do believe that that is the intention of the Department of Commerce. They would like to see more inclusionary housing. And so we would have a couple acres throughout the city that would allow for that higher density versus having it all in one specific area, but it's not a mandate. It is another approach that we could take. I also have 2-acre little squares if you wanted to go, and we could stack those throughout the
You're
city.
saying like when you get less acres. Wait, never mind.
Less acres is higher density, more acres, lower density.
We just have to meet our target goals.
Right.
It says this is available
Right.
here, state of Washington. We have designated this parcel, this parcel, this parcel, and this parcel.
Correct.
You're happy now, so we want our grants.
Yes.
How does that, are the view in Bonnie Lake,
Mhm.
is that, what type of housing is that? Do you know?
Some
Does anybody know? Like, so.
I would
low and-
probably-
slow
I'm gonna-
wondering,
I'm gonna take a wild guess and
like,
say that's.
where does it
roughly
fall?
54 units per acre, or maybe it's not even that, maybe that's half.
But like like, I'm wondering where it falls in the, like,
Here's some different pictures of different densities.
I buy, there's.
because they built more, right? And
know, yeah.
I just, didn't- I know,
They're
it's not,
three
I know it's not
stories, they're
this.
definitely over
Yeah,
the
I know it's
35.
not this, but is it this? The 30 to 50?
Do you know where we can
Some
find
of
that in?
this is kind of, no, I can look that over.
But they're all like,
Density,
that's an example, like it's all together.
Yep.
One not,
Not spread throughout. So these are larger, so 2-story structures, right? Typically, that's when you get that 12 to 18, close to 20.
Highland Park in Seattle.
Cottage
Sure.
housing density is closer to 10, so it's a little bit more than the single family residential. This is also a good depiction of what could be on a single family lot today, with the 4 dwelling units per acre, or 4 dwelling units on any parcel that was mandated by Commerce. When you get to 30 to 50, that's on page 50. You see the 3-story structures.
oh,
So that's more of what we would be looking at for the denser properties.
Which again, we wouldn't want to utilize 410 property for that.
I wouldn't think so, but
I would prefer to see retail businesses.
Is this our breakout right here too? Sitting next to each one of these, it's oddly familiar.
I think that's where we currently allow for residential development. So,
The orange versus the gray.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, though this isn't completely accurate. I think that this is based off of what this says, but not based off of what our zoning map says, because we do allow anywhere where there's pink residential development right now.
Would there be an option, I guess, since would there, it's not a good spot for it, but I'm just throwing this out there. To put that in the Rainier State School property, can we put that in there?
We would,
Traffic would be a disaster, but.
we would need to work with Rainier in order to right now they don't have any plan in place for that property, so we would probably need to work with them in order to get the zoning changed to allow for that. We're sublease, we lease the land from them, so it would be ultimately up to them, but we could allow for that type of a use. It's a possibility.
It would pave the way for them to look at selling a piece if we, or something like that. Again,
Yeah,
the
or-
traffic impact would be, they would have to widen, I mean, it would be a big thing, but.
I don't think it's much worse than when it was actually active down there and a lot of people working in there because it was certain time of day, so you didn't try to get out on Ryan or Collins or
It
anything.
is still busy.
Yeah, not as bad as it used to.
Yeah,
be.
shift change was crazy.
Yeah.
It's really busy when you're riding a bike.
Yeah.
Well,
That
there's no
is-
sidewalks in most of it.
So again, how many units do we have to offer?
Depends on the density.
Well,
We need to provide 617 units for households making 0 to 50% AMI and 265 units for households making 50 to 100% AMI. So 617 units.
so 617 units, and of course, density drives that.
Mhm.
And I don't think, I do not think we need to shove everything on 112th to be zoned that way. Probably need to pull some back into maybe the parcels on the east side of 410 to see what we can offer to comply. I mean, that's just my thought.
What on these side one?
The cemetery.
I don't know.
No.
I don't know if there's any parcels.
I don't think there is. I've been kind of going through my head the last few days and going, the couple large parcels I know of. I think one's a 20-acre parcel and I'm not sure what's down the direction.
Oh, my house?
There's five out
Your
there.
house, but
I'll
not-
sell you 5.
There's some options off of Ryan. There's the corner of 165 right next to the fire station where we could do a portion of that.
Hannah, how many of those do we need in theory?
If we were to do all of it, we couldn't do all of it there, but we are assuming that some of these 0 to 50% AMI will be spread throughout the city. But for us to get the vast majority, 408 units, it would be 54 dwelling units per acre. So it would be incredibly dense
Mhm.
No,
housing.
I don't know about anybody else, but I've been here almost 30 years. I don't want to see like we're turning into Bonnie Acres, yeah. You know, let's, I mean, I know we have to at least write this down and say, okay, yeah, we're gonna do this, but.
Well, once we zone it,
I
as
know.
they say, when,
but
if you
zoning
build it,
so-
they will come and they will.
Doesn't fit. And traffic is gonna be, especially on that corner, is gonna be.
Can we get a variance from Commerce? Is there a variance?
No.
I'm just looking for options because exactly, I mean,
Well,
to,
history would say that we can adopt a comp plan and not put it into a zoning map, because that's what happened in our last comp plan update.
well, and to Connie's point, I think I would assume, maybe that's a large assumption, but even our brand new residents in the new developments, when the Blueberry Farm thing, they flipped out because it was gonna be rentals. And, you know, they moved here for this quote unquote lifestyle. So whatever we can do to preserve that, I think is what everybody's looking for, is as much as we can.
Yes.
Councilmember Green.
You were saying like, we could technically put it like, let's say, for example, here. And say, well, there's a new density there, but we know that something's already going in there. So there's still a little land left there, but maybe it's not even feasible for a developer to come in to do the high density stuff for any reason, I don't know. But to look at something like that's kind of a loophole.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is that like a workaround?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we could do 8 acres here, 8 acres here at a little bit lower density, and then also grab some of this as the underutilized.
Is that off the trail?
This is the
that?
apartments that we already have.
Oh, the apartments already have.
Already apartments there.
So if they were to redevelop,
They
they could go to a higher density, for example. There's also some smaller, so not a full 8 acres off of Ryan Road. This one is a large parcel. What is number 20?
That's Blueberry.
That's Blueberry. Okay, so right next to Blueberry, we currently have an industrial zone.
And Feathers property, I think.
That's already,
Is that the red?
no, it's on
No.
the other side.
This one?
I believe that's what this is depicted. No, it Feathers is right here, and probably this yellowish, right?
Yeah.
This right
Yep.
here. Somewhere over here, so right in here.
I thought that was already seen.
I believe it is, but yeah.
But we could pick a couple of those parcels and call them 15 dwelling units per acre, right? So you're allowing for a little bit more than what we currently allow for, but not going all the way up to 50 anywhere. So if we were to pick 3 or 4 areas for a little bit higher density, then we wouldn't have to go anywhere near 50. We'd stay closer to that 25 dwelling units per acre, but we'd need to come up with 32 acres for 25.
Well, the Blueberry Farm, that's supposed to be right.
It's all single family residential. So those are all going to be higher than the 0 to 50% AMI.
There are still some duplexes that are gonna be built in that
Mhm.
complex, and I'm not sure where they're gonna fall on the AMI scale, but that could take away some of the units.
Mhm.
Handful.
And we have several other townhome developments that are in the works, and depending on what they charge for rent, that's gonna determine where they fall on the AMI scale, and then that becomes more of a market factor, and that's a little more tricky for us to plan for.
Well, the townhouses usually aren't gonna be cheap.
No.
I've seen in rented in Buckley, like, it's like there was a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, little, small rickety house. They wanted almost $3,000 a month.
Mhm.
And they'll get it because.
Yeah.
I mean, the rent is getting,
Yeah,
for
the
the
rent,
rest of us, it's getting a lot higher than what we're paying on our homes.
Well, utilities have gone up. Property tax has gone up, and if you own the property, you're gonna pass it along to your resident. I mean, that's just basic economics, and that's, you know, the way it is. I, for one, am not one of these people, you know, having worked in the inner city and been around all types of folks and people's living conditions, whether it's single family, a condo, you know. I don't, I'm not necessarily one of these that is freaked out about having to provide space for high density housing. I'm the closest council member to the Ellison Farmhomes, and they've been there for a while now, and I'm not aware of any loss of any type of quality of life for me or any of my neighbors. I mean, it's just people need a place to live, and you know, and if we have to set aside, then it's up to the private market to do what they will with the zoning that's there, and we've complied with our obligation.
the reality is the rental costs being what they are, no matter how tight you pack them in, it still may not fall within this chart. There's nothing we can do about that. The market drives that.
If we were to do the land off of Hinkleman that is currently zoned the neighborhood mixed use. And these properties down here, that combined acreage, we would probably be able to get a density closer to 30 dwelling units per acre over that amount of space.
And be done and just have those
Mhm.
2 spots and that's it.
Yeah, I would extend this a little bit more. We would probably have it out like that.
This is kind of one of those, we're not voting on it, it's kind of one of those bobblehead things.
Yeah, we're just
We're in
discussing,
consensus that-
because we need to put maps together for our open house on July 16th, and I don't want anyone to say, oh, we've never seen this before. So what we were just looking at was these properties. And this
It's-
property. Chris, is this undeveloped?
Mhm.
It's contractor yard.
Or that's a contractor's yard. We could do that one too. Yeah, add this
The-
one too.
The only reason I
Because it's
thought
under
here was because
design.
it's close to the school.
The acres is
The
like,
kids could walk, you know.
That
there's-
was-
that would be the.
Well, it's easy out on there.
Well, I would say if we did all of those, I'll do the math calculation, it would probably be closer to 30.
That's kind of what.
So it would be a little less dense.
Maybe you do an UGA and then.
But again, like-
High school.
The loophole, We know that
That is
there's
the loophole.
something going on here.
Yeah.
Well, and if, I believe that's scheduled
There's
for a
something.
traffic circle there, which makes,
Yeah.
kind of makes
Yeah.
sense for traffic flow. But that will be driven by other factors too. I just don't want any of the council members to be lost on Connie's point, which is nobody's gonna be happy about this, period.
Nope.
We can point the finger at the state or the county or commerce or what have you. It's all gonna rest right here on the 8 of us. And so this is something that's gonna take some thinking and some, I mean, we have to do it, so we want to make it the least impactful as we can, I guess is my last 2 cents worth, maybe.
But
There
I
might be
say that
more
the
sense,
city messages that to the community, that we are under the State Growth Management Act, whatever, we are required to X, Y, and Z. We have sat down and sufficiently looked at open spaces to identify for that use in order to comply with the state mandate.
Now, do we, on 112, the property on the left side where the trail goes up, do we own any of that one? The opposite side of the.
In the Cottonwood. Disaster
We do
there
own
and stuff.
some of it, yeah.
Yeah, that's all wetland.
Yeah.
Wetland mitigation area, but yeah, we own it.
Well, it's wetlands, but
Yeah.
it's still land in it.
They filled in half of the valley along
Yeah,
Route
it's-
67. It can be done.
mitigation purposes.
Yeah.
What's
Well, that
the,
would be a bad idea.
what's like the minimum density it would have to be to qualify for this? Down here? This doesn't have to be 50 per acre, it could be
That's what she was saying. She could
Yeah.
get it to 30 maybe.
30.
Yeah.
But is
Again,
there
the
like
more
a-
real estate you
I
put into the
asked- yeah,
kitty,
I
the
asked-
more you can spread it out.
Is there a cutoff? Like, I mean, who's
I-
saying what density?
I asked our
is-
consultant that earlier
Okay.
today and she didn't have, she said that there hasn't been really clear guidance, but generally it's about that 25 to 35 would be the minimum that we could straight face say these could be made into affordable housing units.
It's just, that's so weird, like, how is there not guidance? I mean, who's to say if there's no guidance, what the affordable, and say, hey, this is the affordable right here, this place, you know,
Mhm.
whatever that is, like.
They're saying multifamily, so
Okay.
denser multifamily and denser multifamily is 25 to 35 dwelling units per acre. 25 and up.
Okay.
And even 25 is lower density on the density scale when it comes to multifamily.
Well, and being driven by the state, the county isn't under the same gun that we're under because you can look at Tahali. It's a perfect textbook example of what this is complete. Tahali is completely against all of growth management, but it's there.
We have good justification to keep our density lower and spread out because of the ladder truck situation where we are, only able to put in 2 of those larger structures. Those are, again, that 30 to 50 dwelling units per acre if you allowed for 600 to 800 square foot apartments, but then they're still going to have to provide parking because we don't have transit. We have other barriers that justify us keeping it a little bit lower density. It's more practical for the city. It would be difficult to say this is our one spot for affordable housing. But our code in every other area does not support having such dense housing just there, right? They wouldn't be able to build up to the 5 stories that they may need to in order to make them nice units or provide for as much open space. So we might be losing more in community character. It would be in a smaller area, but 8 acres is not nothing. So something else to consider.
This is a dumb question, and I apologize. So what's the process here? So let's say we attempted to get the zoning to meet what they want, but we couldn't find a way to work, so we just submit our comp plan. Is there like a grace period? Do they send it back and say, try over, or like, is it just like, hey, you don't get any funding forever? Like,
Yes,
how does that work?
I experienced this in my past life.
Okay.
So when your comp plan isn't certified, they send it back to you with a letter and they give you an extension in order to try again. And
Okay.
then you resubmit it.
Okay.
So we can do that. We have a lot of vacant land, so it would be difficult it would more be testing commerce to see if they would,
But-
take a different path than what they've identified, but we certainly can. And in that period of time, that agency's funding was not impacted so long as they met we had to meet with PSRC, have meetings with them. They reviewed on a quarterly basis that we were working towards compliance and helped us. They offered their assistance with helping us find a solution.
Okay, so we could, I mean, technically, we could look at this. And say, hey, like, we've tried, it's not feasible, yes, we have vacant land, but this can be impacting traffic negatively. This is a ladder truck issue, this, showing different metrics why it's not feasible, submit that plan. And then,
I mean, with nothing?
We're
Submit it with
exceeding,
nothing?
we're
That's not
exceeding.
saying we make it, we try.
We're exceeding our growth targets and spending a great deal on a consultant right now in order to try to get our comp plan certified, that I'm hopeful we don't have to continue to spend. That would be one thing. Beyond that, with the amount of available land that we have, now that we are being required to provide for multifamily housing, we are going to exceed our growth targets on every other income bracket. And our population targets, because now that every single family residence can have 4 on it potentially, that's going to increase our population. So what they're challenging us to do for the first time, every agency, is to find places for apartments and multiplexes. And I think it would be difficult for us to say we can't find a place for an apartment and a multiplex.
With all the land that we have.
Yeah.
And I think rather than play that route, I think it would be better for us just to put it in several different places, and then we'd be done with it for another 8 years until we have to do this again. And then the consultant fees, we can be done with that. Everybody would be happy except for our citizens who don't want more people here, but we do have to have a plan.
So is there a consensus of council that, we played around with these lovely widgets that the city administrator brought? Rather clever, if I may. Can it be the consensus of council that we understand that we need to submit a zoning update to allow for this type of housing to comply with the state of Washington, and that city administration can bring it back? Next week, we have a council meeting. We could start that out with a study session to review that and, approve it. Because again, there's an open house on the 16th, so we're gonna have to do that. It's not gonna be done tonight.
Right.
Because I think I'm a visual person, and I'm one of those kinesthetic persons. You gotta touch things and see things. We had one document that shows the zoning proposed changes to comply with the growth, with the comp plan. Would that be helpful for council?
I think this shows it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and from staff side,
Aren't
I
you
want to
just
make sure
looking
that,
like-
I want to make sure that direction is coming from you
Mhm.
and where you want those units to possibly be located. So what I've
I like
heard is that
this.
this land is
This.
here,
Yeah, this and this.
here,
Yeah,
here.
Yeah.
here.
I
Yeah,
thought we were just
Okay.
nodding our heads.
okay,
And possibly that pink.
which one?
next to
This,
the
this,
pink.
This
this.
one?
How many acres would that be?
So I'm gonna bring that one.
That's
Have we identified, you just pointed at.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. This,
Okay.
this,
Okay.
5, okay.
And
What's
then,
So what,
the-
that's 24, 31?
Yeah, just the yellow. So everybody needs to look at that.
How many acres did we?
And then take a drive around and look around and see if there's something that makes more sense. I mean, there's.
I'm gonna do the math.
That's 5.
with that one by the acreage.
And this is 16.
Do our density, and maybe we can.
So that's
cut one of those
31.
off.
Okay,
okay, that'd be helpful.
but what do you think would make the most sense to cut off? I'm just curious. That one,
This-
yeah. Okay.
this wet piece.
Oh, wait, what are these?
Sorry.
Oh, these are already ones we have existing? Okay.
Just, I mean, they can, the wet part.
Wait, what was this? Sorry.
There we go.
No,
This is-
like-
this is-
And everybody's different.
Oh, that we were.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah.
I just can't believe they even used them.
Trucks already.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is that gonna be a roundabout?
Yeah, I would.
Well, and as soon as they.
Is that-
used it, you know,
We don't know what to do until. it was
I
used.
don't think people.
Well, yeah.
Because it is
It's
a
true.
road right away.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's on.
We have to go.
That makes
sense.
sense.
Yeah, it's true.
Courtney also drew on something maybe by the fire.
Oh, yep.
Is that what it it is?
She's in the shop.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if we identify it and. Yeah, hey, figure it out. That's on you.
I know.
The developer would love it.
Yeah. I'll just say, this is land we have available.
And so that's just.
Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't know what explains it in the system. It still comes down to market forces and market factors.
It's not that you
We can't make people build
No.
the affordable housing, but we have to allow.
Hey, there's-
So that's
yeah.
what we're doing.
But wait, there's more.
Okay. Did we do it?
Yeah, but there's more to talk about.
Oh,
Can't wait.
270.
That was the housing question. Now we have the housing question.
yeah. We had the same ones you drew down there. So, yeah.
You want the other one out?
Mhm.
Let's leave it in that.
She wants to leave this on.
Out. Okay, so now this is for commercial redevelopment.
Let me give it a second.
So right now we have our industrial zone, which is somewhat here, a little bit over here. In this property, which we just said we were going to rezone possibly for multifamily, and then a contractor's yard right next to Rainier School. These are the definition of spot zones, which means that there's no neighboring zoning district that is similarly zoned. It's in the middle of our residential area, and we have a industrial zone parcel, which means that legally, if they wanted, they could expand their industrial use and continue it in perpetuity. What we'd propose as part of this update is to rezone these areas to either residential or multifamily in order to bring them compliant with the rest of the area, which would make those parcels legal non-conforming. So they could continue to operate for as long as they would like to, but they can't expand. And if they were to redevelop, they would redevelop with something that is more similar with their surrounding uses.
Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
know which parcel you're talking about. Kind of goes up on the hill and was sold at one time for.
Integrated stairs is the one
Right.
where Courtney's fingers are.
This one, and then the one right next to Rainier School is right across from you. Yeah, right across from you. Yeah. So that's one. So on our revised zoning map that you see in a couple of weeks, we're gonna have these recolored to residential. Okay. And then for commercial along 410, everything that we've done thus far has been in an effort to allow more uses for more flexibility depending on what the market brings, rather than us trying to predict every use that could one day be in the city of Buckley, with a couple of exceptions. So the prohibited things that we've discussed has been really storage units. And we're not allowing for any additional marijuana dispensaries. So right now, I included permitted uses for all zones. So this is our land use table where we try to, and most cities do, we make our very best effort to identify every use that could possibly exist in a city and say where it can be located. The yellow highlighted section is called this frontage zone, where for the first 150 feet off of 410 and adjacent to Mundy Loss and off of 165, these are the uses that are allowed. You'll see that storage is not permitted in this area, which is how we've seen Elk Head storage behind Elk Head. I can't remember what it's called.
There's Western Self-Storage.
Yeah.
And Buckley Storage.
Yeah, be developed a bit off of the frontage, though you can still see it from 410. It's still, that's its primary point of access. So maybe one spot to start is that 150 buffer wide enough, or do we want to see more of a prohibition on storage, whether that's a larger setback or just a prohibition altogether, unless it's an accessory use for another commercial or industrial use that has some type of retail. So an example of that would be Aero Lumber, right? They're allowed to have storage so long as they have their retail. Still, that's just one example.
And not to get off track, but I don't know if anybody's interested in that alumina piece, putting that in the high density, that would lesser of two evils. Would you rather have the ugly storage stuff stacked or a big complex? Just
With this, we could still make them legal non-conforming.
right.
But have it redeveloped as commercial instead of residential.
Yeah, either or both, yes. And that's just another piece, another block that,
I would like to see no more storage.
No more
None.
storage ever.
Anybody want to see any more storage units on
Nope.
410?
Oh, nope.
Moratorium on
No,
storage.
You could just say
None.
no more, like we did
None.
with the marijuana and that, no more.
No more.
Okay. Easy. All right, so beyond that, when we're talking about the frontage zone versus what is today our central commercial zone and our general commercial zone, there's a couple of different things that we can think about for future uses. Some of this is for economic development and some of this is what do we need within the city. When we last spoke about this a couple weeks ago, I mentioned fast food. And it was very quickly, yes, we want more fast food. We need it for retail sales tax. I don't believe that we want to encourage all and any and as many as could possibly come here. And so with that, now would be the time in our 1 year or once every 10-year cycle to identify if there are specific locations where you don't want it, or if there are specific locations where you do want it. McDonald's is going in right here. The city owns these properties. And then this is owned by the church, this little one on the other side of that vacated land. Realistically, behind where McDonald's is going, there is enough space for another drive-through. We know that there is a potential drive-through to be located at this number 50 Robertson Landing.
Like a restaurant, like what? Like
Starbucks.
Oh, Starbucks.
Mhm. And if we were to see additional, Buckley Gas and Coffee is another drive-through. And really, that's the best way to distinguish it is drive-through versus non-drive-through. And we can put criteria in place for design review about how the drive-throughs are oriented, the amount of queuing lanes they need to have, landscaping, the design of the drive-throughs. But from what I have been told, when McDonald's shows up, typically others follow. And so I want to make sure that when those others come in, we could do similar, like we just talked about with storage or the marijuana establishments where it's a maximum, right? The first or the next 4 fast food drive-throughs, or we could say drive-throughs are only allowed in certain areas of the city. There's a lot of different options depending on which track we want to take. Do we want to just?
Do you know, will McDonald with their, will they have access going out this way? Or is it just?
Yes.
Like onto 112th or no? Like,
No,
because that's
it's
not- they're not
165 and
Just 165 and then
410.
Okay.
Yeah. So it seems like we would not want to have all the drive-throughs in one spot just because we want this to be a walkable city. And so it would be nice to have some drive-throughs on the other side of 410. Just because people on that side, your kids want to walk to Murphy's or whoever, taco time and get something. It would be nice to have something on the other side of 410 as well. And maybe not have everything in one spot because we want people to use us all the way up and down 410.
Any other comments on that? And I agree with Councilmember Burgess. We should probably spread it out and. We have McDonald's on the southeast corner of that intersection. It would be nice maybe on the northwest side going toward Bonnie Lake, having whatever comes in there.
Yeah.
So there currently is another drive-through coffee stand slated to go in towards the edge of city limits right here.
Oh,
Out at Muddy Loss.
by the green door.
Yeah, just right by it.
What is that?
It's an espresso shop.
Oh.
It's right there at the benchmark.
Oh,
They're all on one.
So-
What's available like for,
Yeah.
it's like a bunch of warehouses and stuff. Like where would it? Get Jack in the Box or Taco Time or whatever. Go up here.
Popeyes.
Right here, that's it.
That's it.
Okay.
What about by Blue Rooster? Is that where that's at? Or the?
Blue Rooster
No,
would
that's
be
over
over here. So there might be some,
Tiny little.
yeah,
Right there.
when we're talking about the queuing lanes and stuff, it would be very difficult to cite, or it could be very difficult to cite on those parcels. So I think that these are probably would be the easiest sell. Most everything else that's vacant along 410 has some significant environmental constraints, and there isn't full movement on 410. And so until we have a center turn lane going the span of this area, it'll be difficult to have a drive through on the opposite side of the road, but it is certainly possible. If we're talking about spreading them out, then I think it's just something that as a council and I will be keeping very close track of and an eye on, because I don't want to have spot zones where your drive-through can go here, 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 and here. And we've just zoned those specific parcels for that. It would be easier to put an overall theme of, we only allow 4 or 5 or 6, or however many you want to have in the city, or this is the only area that we allow them. And it's all kind of cushioned together, just from a zoning map perspective. We're not supposed to be spot zoning and just picking and choosing where things go.
Well, I think.
One
we've
parcel.
Got enough public storage,
Mhm.
and between us and on the way to Bonnie Lake and Enumclaw, there's plenty of public storage. So I'd say no more.
Yep, moratorium on that.
Moratorium. And then hopefully we can get it filled in with nicer projects,
Mhm.
whatever they do, not necessarily with another retail, drive-through restaurant, but something that, right now, actually, that spot doesn't look bad, and they're redoing the car wash. I'm not quite sure how.
Brown, yeah.
So they're updating it, so that area is starting to look good.
Mhm,
So people, we don't need any more storage, they've got plenty.
mhm.
And you drive back there, it looks nice. It's done very nicely. But we need some other things on that side of the street. Like coffee shops, because all the coffee shop, I don't drink coffee, but all the coffee shops are on one side of 410.
I don't really want to see more than 4 fast food. I mean,
I don't know where they would go.
Oh, no, I'd like to, like
I
everybody
mean-
else, they'd like to have a nice sit down restaurant.
yeah, I know.
But
Where we put the Texas Roadhouse. When I go.
Right there.
It's-
Got your money.
take up that
Church
whole
property
area.
right there.
Well, it would be nice to have like a pharmacy and,
I know.
things that people need,
I don't see much room for more than 4 or even 4 if it's just
No.
really right here. It's
It would be
only.
4.
1,
That could
2,
be
3,
4.
4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
on each
But
corner.
this is the city's property. So if we were wanting to incentivize something else, a different type of a use, I think this is probably our most valuable property that we'd be looking to sell right now. And it would be a prime location for fast food. It could also be a location where if we wanted to offer a discount for a certain type of use, like a pharmacy or a bank, or I don't think it's quite large enough for a grocery store unless we got, because that again is closer to 8 acres. We'd be scooching really close to that Veterans Memorial.
No, no.
So that would be another way that we could incentivize those types of uses. The other ways that we talked about incentivizing those uses is waiving TIF fees, some of the impact fees, as well as we could even reduce the permitting fees for those projects, for those specific uses. So right now in this 150-foot buffer, it's mostly everything that is retail oriented, which I think is what we've been discussing, wanting to have located there. So our code prescribes that now for the first 150 feet. Do we want to expand that? Or if we were to just put a moratorium on storage, do we want to see how it goes and see if there continues to be an issue with other uses that could pop up? It's difficult because we have warehousing and distribution, for example, that could have some retail frontage, but also have storage accessory uses. Those can bring limited jobs, but jobs and some of that would be allowed. Light
The thought
industrial,
process on expanding the 150 feet would be to what?
force more commercial,
Okay.
force more retail.
And expand it how much? No, okay.
When I at first was starting to do some mapping here, I was looking at kind of these parcel lines, which are almost drawn directly through on this side, but then it gets very wiggly on this side. So there isn't a clear way to, 200 feet would be another 50 feet extended off of that. So that wouldn't be a very large amount. And you'd encompass a couple more complete parcels at 200 feet. but still allow for some of the mixed use. But for example, the Seattle Boat Storage, they were going to be required to provide some commercial immediately adjacent to 410 if they came in. We have not seen anything
No, not
additional
since I've
with that,
started.
yeah, with that project. So I'm not gonna say it's dead, but we haven't seen anything.
So what's the consensus of the council? Regarding these uses, how many fast food? Leave it as it is. The main goal of this, I believe we've accomplished to comply with code. This other stuff is not as pressing because there's no mandate on us on these other items. It's more like, what do you want to see?
Right.
Bring.
I would say, so here's my list. So I only see 3 feasible drive-throughs here because I'm not willing to part with the city property and encroach on the Veterans Memorial. So no more than 3 drive-throughs that even ever happens. Moratorium on storage. And then you were saying that another 50 feet, so a 200-foot setback would force more retail here. So I'd support a 200-foot setback. In my laundry list, I guess.
And drive-throughs not including coffee. Got the coffee
Right.
covered, but that's a drive-through, so whatever that looks like.
Drive-through connected to fast food? Or-
We could try to, I was noodling this earlier, tying it to the ITE code, which is traffic codes. So they have even more uses than what we have. Try to get more specific.
And it's a double-edged sword if we want to say, which is good, that's not necessarily bad, but we say no more than three fast foods in the next 10 years roughly. They could race in, go, well, we want one of those spots, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that's the big thing with the McDonald's throughout what I've been hearing a lot of is, it's not the McDonald's itself, it's what it's going to lead to, because just like O'Reilly's for auto parts. Once they do all the homework and once they're in, the rest know if they can make money, we can make money, and boom, 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 then the chain reaction begins. So that's something we can put a protection in place for now. And we can always retract it, say, oh yeah, there's 2 more that really want to come in, and we or whoever's here at the time can release that. And it isn't binding for 10 years. In the next 10 years, we can change it.
Oh, we've changed this over.
Yeah.
Several.
So mentioning O'Reilly's, I spoke with a rep from them last week and they're planning on submitting for a site development by the end of the month. And that's gonna be right here on this vacant parcel. There are trees that front 410. But other than that, there shouldn't be any environmental concerns with that specific
They
lot.
call it like the auto.
And so we're looking forward to getting that.
No, what is that one called?
Is it next to Platt Electric?
Next to Hello Fresh,
Oh,
just west of there.
oh,
You know, there's cars.
Yeah.
Kind of
We'll be
like-
back.
and right-
We're running for-
Oh.
But on the-
I do too. Columbia Bank.
Yeah.
The old Columbia.
I love it.
Other council comments, questions on this topic, on this?
So we're happy with having combined zoning. Expanding the buffer to 200 feet for light industrial, moratorium on storage, and I'll see what I can do to limit drive-throughs throughout the zone, or we just are prepared to take action in the future if it becomes a problem.
because ultimately I don't want to see a ton more fast food. I want to see like normal like restaurants. I know that they don't bring, it's somebody has to come and want to do that, but
Yeah.
Like a family restaurant.
yeah. I don't know.
McDonald's has a playland. What do you?
Well,
Families go.
yes, that's true, but I'm thinking of a sit-down restaurant where they
Yeah.
come and they pour your coffee for you.
Outback Steakhouse, whatever. Those come
Yeah,
usually
yeah.
later after all the chains and
Yeah.
I mean. that
Fast
machine.
food generates a lot of sales tax,
Yes.
so
No.
it's a balance.
Anything else?
I don't think so, unless there's any other comments or things that you're hoping to see in this rendition of comp plan updates.
I love the game.
Yeah, I love it.
That's cool.
Okay, so next thing is go around the table, council member comments, and I'll just start. This is just a general question. As I stood at the log show grounds on Saturday and mild weather and amongst friends and like-minded people and looked around the city and it was paralyzed. Traffic was paralyzed. There were people on foot. It was a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
So what I want to see if we can get for us, a high level financial impact for that weekend. If that's able to be done, if that's not able to be done, I know it's not gonna be done soon because you gotta do your books and everything. But it was a beautiful thing to have this town just, and our new parking lot last weekend got used every day to the max.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it. Others. Nobody has nothing to say?
I know,
Log
like
show's
as per
great.
usual, Log Show
Log
sold a
show's
lot of
amazing.
beer, so whatever that number is, I mean, they sold probably more than normal. It was
What
out
did
of
they say?
control
It was like
Saturday.
780 some people come?
It was a
Yeah,
lot
it
of
was a
people.
lot of
It was good.
But I was just like, how do we fix the stands in the arena of the log show? Because those rickety ones, like, would we be liable for somebody if those
Oh,
broke?
Every year they get upgraded. I only know this because I
Yeah.
help do it. But the city has insurance and the Log Show carries insurance. So if
Okay.
anything happened during Log Show
Okay.
or Junior, the 2 months that they have control of it, that's on
Mm.
their insurance but yeah, they
I
slowly
saw the
are,
boards get updated for
Mhm.
sure, but like the whole structure of that back one is like totally rusted, rotted. I'm like, oh God, like one wrong move, somebody's going down this thing.
yeah, when they get loaded with people.
Yeah.
I did build some of those when I was in welding class in high
Yeah.
school. So
Well,
they're probably due for replacement.
Yeah, that was my only thing, cause I feel like each year it's just gonna be more and more people attending this. I mean, even this year, I saw like randoms from Gig Harbor, just everyone coming down and I'm like, oh, welcome to the log show. But it's like, if we're attracting more and more people to this, we're gonna need
More,
room to put them.
more seating. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's bleachers that aren't being used that are tucked over in next to the White River Family Care kind of.
Mm-hmm,
And I mean, I don't know how high you can go, but yeah.
yeah.
They look pretty rickety too, though. So
Yeah.
I have one thing. The stop signs at A Street and Main Street with the lights on them.
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I like those.
Well, there's so many times that people pull out, and I think some people think it's a four-way stop and they pull right out in front of you. And
Mhm.
there was one day where I had to hold on to the dog and he almost hit the windshield of our little Model A pickup. It was scary.
Mhm.
Yeah. That Chris got right on that. That's been my biggest concern for a while, and at least that one's taken care of, so.
Is there?
Expensive.
And yeah, and what even like almost half of what we originally budgeted for, Chris found it. Somebody else that was buying a couple, and so that was great work.
Is there, this may be just off the wall and maybe not able to be done, but in front of the salon there, is there a way to just say compact vehicles? Because if there's big trucks parked there,
Yeah.
you cannot see when you're pulling up.
The one that we could see if we could move that back about 10 feet,
Right across in
the
City Hall.
cinder block. Yeah, we need to move the whole building back, but
Can we make that just be,
Or we could restrict parking, and just paint the curb. I think it would be harder to make it compact, because there isn't a color, right? That's clearly to identify compact, but if we were to just
no
say no,
signs that say
no parking,
compact parking, then
we
I
could
don't know
try
if
it.
that's-
Yeah.
Mhm,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, under 15 minutes or something. I mean, people pull up there and walk across and pay their city bill or whatever but
Because it's the same demand on the ice cream side.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Mhm.
You can stack up and you can't see.
yeah, if anybody parks right directly in front of the ice cream shop, then they can't see who's coming.
And big, tall lifted trucks,
Right.
you know,
Mhm,
they do make visibility bad.
mhm.
Hey, Chris.
Councilmember Burbank.
To piggyback off the stop signs, the crosswalks look great painted. I still would like to see us do a little bit more at the cluster in front of the district office. Those crosswalk. They're painted, which is great. But the amount of times that I've seen people almost get hit
Mhm.
in that intersection because there's
There's
so
Four.
many,
5.
I don't know, that's probably for a later date, but they were at least painted so people could see that there were crosswalks everywhere, but it was,
You're talking on the A Street mostly.
uh,
A Park River.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
where people almost get hit is they're crossing from the west side of A to the east side of A. Or
Yeah,
vice versa,
yeah,
they're crossing,
yeah,
right? Cause we
yeah.
could do those, maybe do those green, all those on that, on, next time we do the green.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
The green crosswalk at the trail.
Yeah.
Goes trail by Wally, that's about $1,800.
But it's much more, I didn't love it at first, but it's much more noticeable
Oh,
than,
yeah, it
you know what I mean? And especially because when school's in session, kids are walking to school. I mean, it's just such a,
We have fun that has.
it's for a later date, but.
No.
Crosswalks.
Yes.
Yeah, we can look at that. We can,
I know.
we can certainly look at that some more. Let's put that on the, just pencil in to at least price it out and see if they'll, cause we have that done.
Yeah.
We have the green done, right?
Every-
Outside. Oh, we, okay,
That's just.
right. Yeah, that it's that torch down type, yeah.
Right there with the trail and then those 4 spots. I mean, it is dangerous.
That whole intersection could use
Yes.
something for sure.
And we still haven't got the flags back, which I don't know how helpful those little flags at the trail are, but
Oh, yeah.
we still don't have those.
Yeah,
back.
that'd
Yeah.
be-
I don't know if they got, yeah, they got piped.
They're sword fighting. Anything else, Mayor?
I think, and I don't know, we just did the log show thing, but I don't know if everybody's aware, the Bull of the Woods passed Saturday morning,
Mhm.
of log show when he was the Bull of the Woods. And we always joke at log show about it. Yesterday is Gene Rawson Day in the past because, well, those that participate in log show usually party afterwards once they can start. The contestants drink Sunday night. And so they all take Monday off. So we called it Gene Rawson Day. So I bouncing around in my head to maybe do a proclamation, something for that. Just,
Mhm.
he's a unique individual for sure. 50, he's been in business 50 years, and in that 50 years, he never, ever one time missed a day of work for any reason, ever. He did have back surgery a couple years, last year, anyway. And he was forced, I mean, literally, he couldn't get in and out of the shovel. Anyway, we'll see what that looks like. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there.
Anything else from council? Well, I hope each of you have a great and relaxing Independence Day. And this will conclude 7:48 PM. We'll conclude the Buckley City Council study session.